"Grandma, they're coming," whispered Ella, fear in her voice. Maria tightened her grip on the old rifle. "Let them come. This land is ours." The night exploded with black SUVs, gunfire, and screams. When the cartel snatched Ella away, Maria's eyes turned cold. No longer a frail widow, but a soldier reborn. Every step into the darkness was war, every bullet a promise. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was about blood, love, and survival. The Texas sun blazed mercilessly across the wide fields, beating down on cracked earth and weathered fences. Maria Thompson, her hat pulled low against the heat, worked slowly but steadily, mending the barbed wire along her ranch. To the world, she looked like any aging widow, her back bent by years of toil, her face marked by time. But behind her steady hands lived decades of discipline and fire, a past no one in her small town dared to imagine. A gentle laugh broke the stillness. Ella, Maria's young granddaughter, came running with a water jug in her hands. "Grandma, you should rest. The sun's too harsh." Maria smiled faintly, taking the jug but never pausing her work. "Land doesn't rest, child." "Neither do we." The moment seemed ordinary, peaceful even, until the rumble of engines shattered the quiet. Dust spiraled on the horizon. 3 black SUVs rolled across the dirt road, heavy with menace. Ella froze, her laughter gone, eyes wide with fear. Maria set the jug aside, her hand instinctively brushing against the old scar on her forearm, a memory of battles fought long ago. The vehicles screeched to a halt in front of the ranch. Doors opened and armed men spilt out, their rifles gleaming in the sun. At the center stepped Miguel Ramirez, the cartel boss whose name carried dread across the borderlands. His sharp suit contrasted with the barren land around him, arrogance radiating from every step. "Well, well," Miguel called out, his voice cutting through the dry air.
"This little piece of dirt.
"It's mine now." Maria straightened, her frail frame unmoving, eyes fixed on him with calm defiance. "This land is my family's blood. You won't have it." Miguel chuckled, gesturing for his men to spread out. "You think your fences and old stories can stop me?"
Look around you, senora."
"You're alone," but Maria wasn't trembling. Behind her silence, calculations had already begun. The number of men, the angle of the sun, the distance to the house. She had faced war before, and though her enemies did not yet know it, they had just stepped onto a battlefield. Ella clutched her grandmother's arm, whispering, "Grandma, what do we do?" Maria's gaze never wavered from Miguel. Her voice was steady, almost cold.
"We stand, we endure.
"And if they force us—" She let the words hang heavy as the heat. The ranch that seemed so still only moments ago now throbbed with danger. The first shadow of war had fallen. The air felt heavier as the cartel soldiers fanned out across the ranch, boots crunching over dry earth. Chickens scattered, dogs barked furiously, and dust swirled like warning smoke. Miguel removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that burned with ruthless certainty. "This doesn't have to be ugly," he said, voice dripping with mock kindness. "Sign the papers, walk away, and maybe you and your little granddaughter live in peace." Maria's lips tightened into a line. She stood tall, the sun glinting off her weathered skin. "This land isn't for sale," she said. "Not now, not ever." Miguel's smirk faded. He waved his hand, and his men stormed the porch. Doors slammed open, boots pounded against wooden floors, and furniture crashed. Ella gasped, clinging to Maria's arm, her small frame trembling. One soldier shoved past them, muttering in Spanish as he kicked over a bucket. Maria's eyes narrowed. She didn't move, but every muscle inside her coiled like a drawn bowstring. Miguel leaned close, his voice low and sharp. "Do you know who I am, vieja? Do you know what happens to people who say no to me?" Maria's reply was calm, measured, yet carried an edge like steel. "I've seen men like you before. You all think you're kings, but kings fall." Miguel laughed, but the sound carried no joy. He nodded toward Ella. 2 of his men moved closer, one gripping the girl's wrist. Ella whimpered. That was the spark. Maria's hand shot out, faster than their eyes could follow. In a blur, she twisted the soldier's arm, forcing him to the ground with a sharp cry. The second man reached for his weapon, but Maria was already moving. A precise strike to his throat dropped him to his knees. The yard fell silent for a heartbeat. The cartel soldiers froze, their arrogance shaken by the sudden fury hidden inside the widow's frail frame. Miguel's smile returned, darker now, edged with fury. "So, you're not just a rancher," Maria said nothing. She helped Ella behind her stance firm, unflinching. Miguel pointed at his men, his voice snapping like a whip. "Leave her in for now, but remember this, Senora. When I return, I won't be so polite." The engines roared again. Dust swallowed the ranch as the SUVs sped away. Maria watched in silence, her jaw set. She knew what was coming next. War. The sun had barely touched the horizon when the silence of dawn was shattered. Headlights cut through the dim light. 3 black SUVs returning, engines growling like predators on the hunt. Maria stood on her porch, rifle cradled in her arms, Ella clinging to her side. "They came back?" Ella whispered. Maria's eyes remained locked on the road.
I told you, child.
They would. The vehicle screeched to a halt. This time no words were exchanged. Doors flew open, soldiers poured out, rifles raised. One of them fired into the air, the gunshot echoing like thunder. Chickens scattered, windows rattled, and the dogs barked wildly before silencing in fear. Miguel stepped forward, his face cold, his voice carrying across the yard. "You had your chance. Now this ranch is mine." Maria's heartbeat was steady, her grip firm on the rifle. She whispered to Ella, "Run to the barn. Don't come out until I call." Ella hesitated, eyes wide with terror, but Maria's commanding gaze left no room for argument. The child bolted, disappearing into the shadows. The first soldier moved toward the house, boots slamming against the porch. Maria raised her rifle, not with hesitation, but with precision born of years in uniform. The crack of her shot split the morning air, and the man fell hard onto the dirt. Chaos erupted. Bullets tore through wooden walls, splinters flying. Maria ducked low, sliding across the floor as she reloaded. Every movement was calculated, every breath controlled. She was no longer a widow tending her ranch. She was a soldier back on the battlefield. 2 men rushed through the doorway. Maria swung her rifle like a club, striking one across the jaw, then pivoted and fired point-blank at the second. Both collapsed. Outside, Miguel shouted orders. His voice trembled with rage. "Burn it down if you have to. Drag her out!" Flames licked at the edges of the barn as a Molotov crashed against it. Smoke began to rise. Maria's eyes flared. Ella was hiding there. She couldn't let them close in. With the precision of a sniper, she aimed from the broken window. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3, each finding its mark. Bodies dropped, fear spreading among the cartel soldiers. But despite the losses, Miguel didn't retreat. His men regrouped, surrounding the house like wolves. Maria knew this was only the beginning. The ranch was no longer a home. It was a war zone. Smoke curled into the pale morning sky, the acrid scent of fire clinging to the air. The barn's side was scorched, but Ella was safe, coughing as Maria pulled her close. Relief was fleeting. The cartel had retreated for now, but Maria knew they would return, and next time they would come harder, angrier, and deadlier. Inside the house, shattered glass crunched beneath her boots. Bullet holes scarred the wooden walls. Maria ran her fingers across them, her face set in grim determination. "They think I'm weak," she muttered. "They don't know who they're fighting." Ella looked up at her, eyes still wet with fear. "Grandma, are they coming back?" Maria crouched down, gripping the child's shoulders gently. "Yes, they are. But listen to me, this is our land, our blood. They can take nothing from us unless we let them. Do you trust me?" Ella nodded, though her small body trembled. That night, Maria became a shadow of her old self. She unearthed a weathered trunk hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside lay relics of her past, combat knives, tactical gear, maps scribbled with old coordinates. She strapped on a faded vest, slid the knives into their sheaths, and checked the weight of her rifle. Her hands moved with the precision of a soldier who had never truly left the battlefield. Outside, she worked tirelessly under the cover of darkness. Razor wire stretched across the fence line. Pit traps were dug near the barn. Lanterns placed at angles to cast misleading shadows. Every trap was a message. This land was defended by more than fences and wood. It was defended by a warrior. From a distance, unseen eyes watched. A local farmer, Mr. Hayes, approached cautiously, his hat in his hands. "Maria," he said quietly, words spreading about Ramirez. "Folks are scared. But what you did today, you gave us hope. Maybe it's time we stand with you." Maria's gaze softened, but her tone remained resolute. "This fight will be bloody. Ramirez owns the sheriff. He owns fear itself. If you stand with me, there's no turning back." Hayes hesitated, then nodded firmly. "We've had enough of fear." As he walked back into the night, Maria tightened her grip on her rifle. The battle ahead wasn't just for her ranch anymore. It was for the entire community, and Maria was ready. Dawn broke quietly, the sky painted in soft orange hues. For a moment, the ranch seemed peaceful again. Birds calling from the mesquite trees, cattle grazing in the distance. But Maria's instincts didn't rest. Her eyes scanned the horizon, her rifle leaning against the porch rail. Ella skipped beside her, clutching a ragged doll. "It feels like everything's back to normal," she said hopefully. Maria forced a smile. "Don't be fooled by silence, child. Silence is only the breath before the storm." She was right. The sound came suddenly, engines fast and furious cutting through the morning calm. Dust billowed down the road as more SUVs approached. This time there were more men, armed heavily, moving with grim purpose. Maria's heart sank. She had expected them, but not this soon. "Inside now," she barked. Ella obeyed, running toward the kitchen. Maria took a position, but the assault was swift. Windows shattered, smoke grenades hissed through the rooms, choking the air with burning chemicals. Maria fought through it, firing precise shots, dropping men one by one. Yet they kept coming like shadows flooding the house. Through the chaos, a scream cut the air, Ella's scream. Maria spun, but she was too late. Two masked soldiers had grabbed the child, dragging her toward the SUVs. Maria's rifle snapped up. Bouton explosion rocked the porch, knocking her flat. By the time she pushed herself up, coughing, the vehicles were already roaring away. "Ella!" Maria's cry tore through the smoke. She stumbled forward, only to collapse to her knees in the dirt, rage boiling in her chest. For a fleeting moment, her hands shook. But then her gaze hardened. The cartel hadn't broken her. They had unleashed her. She staggered back into the house, ripped open the old trunk again, and pulled out a battered field radio. Her voice was cold, commanding, the voice of the woman she used to be. "This is Widow 1, she said into the static. "Target confirmed. The mission is to rescue." Engaging immediately, the ranch was no longer her battleground. The war had moved to Ramirez's stronghold, and Maria Thompson was going after them. Night draped the desert in shadows as Maria moved silently across the sand, her figure blending with the darkness. The cartel compound loomed ahead, a fortress of concrete walls and steel gates, guarded by armed sentries. Floodlights swept the yard in arcs of blinding white, but Maria knew their rhythm. She counted each rotation, each pause, like a predator studying prey. From her perch on a rocky ridge, Maria steadied her rifle. Through the scope, she watched the guards pacing the perimeter. Every movement mattered. She squeezed the trigger once, clean, silent. A guard crumpled before his partner even noticed. Another shift, another breath, another shot. 2 sentries gone, and the shadows swallowed their absence. Maria slid down the slope, landing silently in the dirt. She moved low, her body pressed against the ground, slipping through blind spots she had memorized from years of reconnaissance. The air smelled of gasoline and sweat. Somewhere inside those walls, Ella was waiting, scared, alone. The thought burned in Maria's chest, fueling every step. At the compound's edge, she drew her knife, cutting through the mesh fencing. The metal hissed faintly, but no alarm sounded. Once inside, she paused behind a stack of crates, listening. 2 men laughed in Spanish, tossing dice under a lantern's glow. Maria crept forward, struck one across the throat, and dragged the second into silence before either could shout. Her path was painted with risk. Every corner she turned could be death. Yet her pulse was calm, steady, her training guiding her like an old song remembered in the dark. Finally, she reached a warehouse at the compound center. Through a crack in the wooden door, she saw Ella, tied to a chair, frightened but unharmed, a single bulb casting her small shadow across the floor. Two guards leaned against the wall nearby, rifles resting carelessly. Maria's grip tightened around her pistol. She whispered to herself, "Hold on, child. I'm here." One step closer, and this war would ignite into its fiercest battle yet. Maria pushed the warehouse door open, silent as a shadow. Her pistol rose, and with two quick bursts, the guards slumped to the ground before they knew death was upon them. Ella's tearful eyes met her grandmother's, hope flickering back into her small face. "Grandma," she whispered. Maria cut the ropes with a swift slash of her knife. "Quiet now. Stay close. We're leaving." But the escape was never meant to be easy. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the compound. The silence shattered into chaos. Soldiers stormed out of barracks, weapons in hand, boots pounding like thunder. Miguel emerged from the main hall, flanked by his fiercest men. His smile was cruel, his voice booming. "So the widow comes crawling into my den. You should have sold me the land, senora. Now you die here." Maria shoved Ella behind cover. Her rifle snapped to her shoulder, and the yard erupted in gunfire. Each shot she fired was precise, calculated. 2 men dropped. Then 3. The compound filled with screams and the staccato of bullets. Grenades exploded, fire tearing across the night. Smoke clouded the air, but Maria thrived in the chaos. She moved like water, striking from shadows, vanishing, then striking again. Her training, once buried, was alive in every move, every pivot, every trigger pull. Miguel bellowed orders, rage boiling in his voice. "Find the girl. Kill the old witch!" But Maria was unstoppable. She climbed to higher ground, her sniper scope gleaming. One by one, Miguel's soldiers fell. Her rifle sang its deadly rhythm, and panic spread among the cartel. Finally, only Miguel remained, standing in the flaming yard, his pistol aimed at Ella, who cowered against the wall. His voice was venomous. "One more step, and she dies." Maria stepped into the open, her weapon leveled, her voice like stone. "If you touch her, I swear you'll never draw another breath." For a tense heartbeat, the world stood still. The crackle of flames, Ella's trembling sobs, Miguel's finger tightening on the trigger. Then Maria fired. One clean shot. Miguel's gun flew from his hand and he dropped to his knees, stunned. Maria advanced, her shadow tall in the firelight. "This ends now." The compound was no longer a fortress. Flames roared through its walls, painting the night sky with streaks of orange and red, while the acrid smoke twisted into the stars. The ground trembled with the aftershocks of battle, exploded crates, shattered glass, and the silence of men who would never rise again. Maria stood at the center of it all, her chest heaving, rifle hanging loosely at her side. Her hands, steady throughout the fight, now trembled as the adrenaline ebbed. Across the smoldering ground, Ella appeared, her small figure darting from behind a collapsed wall. "Grandma!" she cried, her voice breaking through the chaos. Maria dropped her weapon instantly, her heart pounding harder than it had all night. She knelt, catching the child in her arms. Ella's sobs shook against her chest, tears dampening Maria's dusty shirt. "I knew you'd come," Ella whispered, her words raw with relief. Maria held her tighter, her own throat tightening. "No one will ever take you from me again," she said, each word a vow carved in steel. For all her years of combat, for all the enemies she had faced, nothing had ever mattered more than this moment, her granddaughter safe, alive. By dawn, the compound was nothing more than ruins. Neighbors and ranchers, once too afraid to defy Miguel, arrived in cautious waves. Men carried lanterns, women clutched their children's hands, and whispers echoed among them as they surveyed the carnage. She fought them all. Alone, she brought them down. She's not just a rancher, she's a warrior. Their eyes fell on Maria with reverence, awe, and a sense of safety they had not felt in years. Miguel's reign of terror was broken, his cartel scattered to the winds, and the sheriff, once the face of corruption, was now powerless, his name cursed by those he had betrayed. The people no longer bowed their heads in fear. They stood taller, freer, emboldened by the proof that even the most ruthless tyrant could fall. Back at the ranch, Maria's work began anew. The land bore scars, burned fences, shattered windows, the soil scarred by tire tracks, but it still stood. The ranch was more than property. It was memory, blood, and heritage. Maria had fought for it with every ounce of her strength, and she would not allow it to wither. She wasn't alone anymore. The same neighbors who once kept their distance now arrived with tools, lumber, and food. Men hammered nails into new fences, women prepared meals in the kitchen, and children laughed as they carried buckets of water. What had been hers alone for so long became the heartbeat of an entire community. Together they rebuilt not just a ranch, but a future. One evening, after a long day of work, Maria and Ella sat on the porch, watching the sun bleed into the horizon. The land stretched endlessly before them, painted gold and red by the fading light. The silence was peaceful, broken only by the soft chorus of crickets. Ella leaned against her grandmother, her small hand clutching Maria's calloused fingers. "Grandma," she said softly, "everyone says you're a hero. They say you saved all of us." Maria smiled faintly, her eyes tracing the fields that had cost so much blood. "I'm no hero, child. I'm just a woman who refused to let evil win." Ella studied her face with admiration, seeing not just a grandmother but a guardian who had fought monsters to protect her. "But you are a hero to me." Maria's gaze softened, her heart swelling with pride and love. She kissed Ella's forehead and whispered, "Then that's enough." The night deepened, stars winking into the vast Texas sky. Life slowly returned to the ranch, horses in the corral, cattle grazing under the moonlight, neighbors laughing as they shared supper. The land pulsed with resilience, and Maria felt something she had nearly forgotten: peace. Yet in the quiet, she also knew the truth. Evil never vanished completely. Somewhere men like Miguel plotted in the shadows, hungry for power, blind to the cost. But Maria had proven something no tyrant could erase. Courage, when rooted in love, was stronger than any weapon. Her name would not just be remembered as a rancher, or a widow, or even a soldier. She was a protector, a defender of her family and her people. Her legacy was not carved in stone or written in books, but in the land itself and in the lives she had touched. And so, under the endless Texas sky, with Ella safe beside her and her community rising stronger than ever, Maria Vega's story became more than survival. It became legend, a tale of fire, faith, and an unbreakable spirit.